Hey guys, J9 here. Um, on days that I don't burn, I bake. So today we're going to learn how to make scones from a recipe that I've had for quite a while now. Okay, hold on. Okay, so for this recipe, you need flour, 2 cups. You need sugar, 4 tablespoons. You need baking powder, 2 teaspoons. Now, the thing about baking powder is it expires. So check the date on the bottom because if you have one that's expired, it won't rise. Okay. Salt. Let's see, salt, half a teaspoon. And you want butter. You want 10 tablespoons of butter, which is 5 ounces. And you want it to be very cold, and you want to chop it up in little cubes, like little small cubes. And then 2 egg yolks, just the yolks. Now the whites are going to end up being used to make meringue cookies. And then a half a cup of heavy cream. Heavy cream. The more fat in it, the better off you're going to be. So get the one with the highest fat content. Okay? So now, when you go to bake them, you're going to need a baking sheet with parchment paper on it, or one of those Silpat things on it. You're going to set your oven to 350, and you're going to bake it for 22 minutes. So let's get started. Okay, I forgot to add that you need the mini chocolate chips. It's important to get the mini ones because those will mix up better than the regular size ones in this particular batch. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is wash your hands. Make sure they're nice and clean. No rings on your fingers because you're going to be getting in there with your hands and actually mixing it up with your hands. Okay. So we're doing 2 cups of flour. And when you do the flour, you don't want to push it, like compact it into the cup. You just want to leave it kind of lightly in there and then scrape it off with a butter knife so that you get a nice flat top. Okay, so there's one. I'm not left-handed. And what? If you hear meowing in the background, that's Indiana. He's still getting used to having the dog around. The dog's name is Mac MacGyver. So, yeah. And he's a good dog. I mean, no 2 ways about that. Okay, so 2 cups of flour, 4 tablespoons of sugar, and you can sift this if you want to. I didn't want to pull the sifter out because I'm lazy. Okay, so 1. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a whisk and whisk it up. Okay, just to break things down. That's 2, 3, and 4. No arguing down there. Come on now. Be good to each other. Okay, 2 teaspoons. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. That's 2. And half a teaspoon of salt. Where's my half? We'll just have to do the half this way. That's about a half. Okay. So you're going to either sift it or whisk it, just to kind of break things up and mix it all together. And in the meantime, you're going to have your butter cubed into little tiny cubes and sitting in the freezer. You want it to be as cold as possible. Okay? Alright, so there's that. So now you're going to take your butter, and you see I've chopped them up into little cubes, little tiny cubes, and just drop those in there. And you want to work as quick as possible. If you're in a warm climate, you want to keep it as cold as possible. Like if you have air conditioning, that would be good. I'm in a place where there's fog, so I don't have to worry about it being cold. It's cold all the time. So you want to break these up as much as possible. There we go. You want to use all of the butter. So that's 5 ounces or 10 tablespoons. Now 1 cube is 8 tablespoons. So you're going to use a cube and like a fourth or something like that. And mix these around so that you get the flour onto the butter. Like that. And then you're going to rub your hands against the butter so that you break it up in the flour. Okay. Another thing that you can do is use a fork, a couple of forks, or a pastry cutter. Pastry cutter will work just fine for this. I prefer to work with my hands because then I can actually feel what I'm doing. Okay. So you want it to get to like, so that it looks like coarse sand, like that texture of coarse sand. Now, if you live in California, you know what coarse sand looks like. On the East Coast, they have actually pretty soft sand. So, yeah, I've been there before. I've been to Dedham, Massachusetts in the dead of winter, and that was not fun. I've been to South Carolina and Florida, and I think that's, Nashville, but Nashville is kind of up higher. So you want to break this up as much as possible. And you still want to have some big pieces because that's going to make it more flaky. Just like if you were making pie crust. Okay, pie crust is pretty flaky. Let's see, how did I learn how to do this? Well, I went to the Culinary Academy in 2005 and I got myself a baking and pastry certification. Other than that, my mom has been teaching me how to cook and bake and sew since I was a little kid. And I learned all of the technique from her. And she has since passed away, but I think about her every time I cook. It's a good thing. Alright. So you can see it's kind of, let's see. kind of like coarse sand, and there's still some big pieces in here that will help it to be more flaky. Okay. And at this point is when you want to add the chocolate chips. Now, here's the thing about the chocolate chips. I don't have an exact amount that I use when I'm making my chocolate chip scones. I just listen to when I think it should be done. Okay, so there's one handful, there's 2 handfuls. We'll mix that up, see what it looks like. And you know, there's not that much in here, so I'll just pour in the rest. So that's probably 1/3 of the bag. And this bag is, what, 12 ounces? So 12 ounces. Okay. And 1/3 of 12 is what, 4? Okay. Alright. So, that's all mixed in. Ta-da. Now you want to make a little well in the middle. And you're going to get your egg yolks, so 2 egg yolks and 1/2 cup of heavy cream. And you're going to take those and put them into a bowl separately, and you're going to mix them up, okay? Okay, so I've cracked the eggs. I've got 2 yolks. I've separated my whites out so I can make meringue cookies. And now I have 1/2 cup of very cold heavy cream. Again, the more fat, the better off it is. Okay. I'm going to mix that up. Pour that right in the middle. And now you're going to do like you would for pasta, if you were making pasta. You're going to take it from the outside and move it in while turning the bowl at the same time. I'm sure you guys have seen this process before. Okay. And when it gets to a point that you think you can do it by hand, then you want to go ahead and do it by hand. Because you don't want to mix this too much, because you don't want to build up gluten. Gluten is the strands that makes it very, very tight and chewy rather than flaky. Okay. And I've washed my hands already. I washed my hands before I started with the eggs. Okay. And you want to just mix it until it comes together. And once you get to that point, you're going to put it in the fridge and leave it to cool down. Okay, again, depending on where you live, the humidity and whatever, and how cold it is. If it's pretty cold, you just leave it in there for a little bit, just so that the butter gets cold again. Now, when I was in the Culinary Academy in San Francisco, my bread and pastry instructor was Chef Malia, and she's the one that showed me how to make scones. But that was on a much larger scale because we were making scones for the whole school, and our bread was for the whole school. So, and if you feel like it's too wet, add just a little bit more flour. If you feel that it's too dry, add just a very little bit of cream. Okay. And this appears to be just right. So, there is our mound of scone dough. Just getting all the chocolate chips out of here. Like that. Okay, so when you are ready to bake these, get it off my fingers. When you are ready to bake these, you're going to cut this piece into thirds, and then from that you're going to roll it out and cut those 3 pieces into 8ths. Okay, so you get 24 pieces out of this recipe. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit in the fridge for a little bit till it kind of cools down, and then we'll come back and we'll bake. Okay, we're back. So this has rested for a while. Looks good. Let's see. Ta-da! Looks good. Okay, I've got my oven preheating to 350. Okay, I want to cut these into thirds. Something like that. And something like that. And it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, it would be nice to be exact, but we are not perfect. Okay. Now, I've put a little bit of flour on my board so that it doesn't stick. I'm just going to knead it a little bit to get it to where I want it. Then I'm going to flatten it out into a round. Now, the scones that I make with this are pretty small. They're like 1 or 2 bites. Okay. So you want to flatten it out to about finger height. Okay. So like that. Ta-da. Okay. And then you're going to cut it in half. In half. And then each one in half. Okay, so that you get 8 pieces for each of the 3. Okay, and your scones come out to look like about that. Okay, so that's a single serving. So that's about 2 bites. Okay, now my baking sheets each have parchment on them. Now, when I place them on my baking sheet, I'm going to place them opposite. Okay, so one goes this way and the other one's going to go this way. Okay, that gives them a little bit of room, and you have enough space to put 4 across, depending on the size of your sheet. Okay, so just like that. And you want to work pretty quickly so that the butter stays pretty cold. Okay. Cut that in half. Turn it and go in half again. And then each of those quarters in half. And place it on the sheet pan. Now, depending on how big your sheet pan is, you should be able to get at least a dozen on each pan with space in between, possibly more. And this is where you want to hope that you never get an itch in your nose, because you've got stuff on your hands and you don't want to go itching your nose and then, you know, you've got gunk on your hands, and you don't want to do that. Okay, especially if you're cooking for someone else. Okay. All right, so 4, 8, 12, 16. So on the bigger sheet pan, I was able to get 16. And then on the smaller sheet pan, I'll put the other 8. If you do get an itch on your nose, don't scratch it with your hands, because that's gross. Okay. All right. So cut it in half. And in half again. And then each of those is going to cut in half. Good. All right. And we'll put those on the smaller sheet pan. And do those 3 across. Plenty of space. All right, I don't have a very big kitchen, so space is at a premium here. Now, the next thing you're going to do is get a portion of cream, the heavy cream, and a brush, and you're going to brush each one of these with the cream. Okay, and then on top, you're going to put sugar. Now, I use the thick granulated sugar, the sugar in the raw is what they call it. And I'm just going to sprinkle that on top. Okay. So we've got the sugar in the raw, or turbinado sugar. Okay. It's pretty thick. The grains are pretty thick. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then you're just going to can't really see it very well. Hold on. I'm trying to get this over here. Sometimes life takes a little rearranging, okay? Don't be afraid to rearrange your life. It's okay, you'll survive. Okay, here we go. So, just going to sprinkle it on top there. Very loosely, you know, whatever comes out, comes out. It's not going to hurt anyone to have big sugar. I mean, this is not the most healthiest of recipes, but everything in moderation, right? Okay, so once you have all that done, you're going to put it into the oven, 350 for 22 minutes, 22 to 24 minutes. And then halfway through, you're going to, so it's in like this. Halfway through, you're going to rotate, and you're going to switch it to the opposite level that it's on. So if it's on the top shelf in the oven, you're going to put it on the bottom. And if it's on the bottom shelf, you're going to put it on the top. But you want to make sure you rotate, because that will make a more even bake. Okay? So we're going to put these in right now. And then I'm going to do up this other set and put these in, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so I just finished up my second batch. I'm going to put these in the fridge. And the alarm just went off, or the timer just went off for the oven. So now, if you remember, halfway through the process, I turned them and I rotated them. So you always want to keep your surface clean. So anytime you switch to the next process, you want to clean your surface. Make sure it's all good. All right, let's check these babies out. Safety first. Always wear gloves. Oven mitts. All right. Oh, man, these look perfect. Look at that. Look at that. Perfectly browned on the bottom. Nice and yummy on the top. Now you could wait until they cool off, or you could try one right now. I think I'm going to try one right now. So this one looks good. Okay. We open it up. Nice and moist on the inside. Really hot. Really hot, so be careful. Okay. Oh, perfect. It's perfect. So, look at that. Nice and moist on the inside. Crispy and brown on the outside. It's just the best. So, now you've got your dozen or so scones from the first batch. You're going to let them cool. Let them cool for a little bit. Put them on a rack so that they get air all the way around them. And so that they don't get moist on the bottom. Then you're going to let your sheet pans cool. Unless you have another set of sheet pans, you got to let these cool, because if you put your next batch on hot sheet pans, it's going to melt the butter right away. So you don't want to do that. You also don't want to touch your hair and then go in and touch food. You got to wash your hands off first. So, yeah, so that's how you make scones. I'll put the ingredients in the bottom, and so that if you choose to make your own, you can, in the description, which is what I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed this. I did. My sister asked me to make some scones and meringue cookies for Mother's Day, which is coming up on Sunday. And they're having a Mother's Day brunch on Friday with the kids at her school. So now, where did I put it? Oh, here we go. So now I have, because I've already done 2 batches, so I've already made 2 batches. So I have 4 egg whites. Okay, so now the egg whites I'm going to end up using to make meringue cookies. And that'll be in another video. So, you never have any waste when it comes to stuff like this. I always try to use food that I'm going to use again. Like, if I use egg whites, if I use egg yolks, I'm going to use the egg whites in another recipe. don't ever throw food away. It's not worth it. There are so many starving people out there right now. And, you know, think about the people in Ukraine and how they don't even have a house anymore. You know, they have nowhere to live. They have nowhere to go. And my heart goes out to them. So, yeah, so that's how you make scones. And I hope you enjoyed watching me do this. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.